Welcome to Pay What You Can Writing Webinars by yours truly, Paul Lima. Today's webinar is called Tell Your Story, How to Write Memoirs and Autobiographies. Recommended payment is $10. You can pay more or less. Pay what you can at www.paullima.com/PWYC. Again, it is a Pay What You Can webinar. The workshop fee includes the PowerPoint. If you are unable to download the PowerPoint, email paullima.com@gmail.com with subject line PPT Memoir. You'll receive a PDF of this PowerPoint. The PDF can be opened on almost any computing device. Today's webinar is based on 3 books: Tell Your Story, How to Write Memoirs and Autobiographies, How to Write a Nonfiction Book in 60 Days, and my memoir, The Accidental Writer, a Memoir. You can read more about these and other books on writing at paullima.com/books. And ignore the typo in the PowerPoint. It says BOOLKS, that's /books. A little bit about me. I've been a professional writer for over 35 years. Since 1990, I've worked as a freelance business writer and writing trainer. I've written and self-published 20 plus books, and you can read more about me if so inclined at my website, paullima.com. That's PAULLIMA.com. Today's workshop agenda: we're going to look at the writer's greatest fear, memoir versus autobiography, the writing process, some things to do before you start, a little bit about the structure of the memoir autobiography, initial story research, pre-writing exercises, brainstorming and clustering, and those you will find are key to this webinar. Outlining your book TOC, or Talk Table of Contents, that follows from the brainstorming and clustering. Clustering your book table of contents. Each chapter you get to cluster. Continue to outline. The benefits of outlining, just in case I have to sell you on that, and a little bit about writing and editing. So it's the getting your book outlined, as you will see by today's webinar, that is key. So what is the writer's greatest fear? What do professional writers like least about writing? I think it's the blank page. Now, some other writers may differ, but I think most writers sit down, see the blank page, and think, I wonder if I can go someplace for a coffee. Blank pages are sitting there waiting to be filled, and that can be intimidating. It means you have a job to do. You have to fill that blank page. This webinar will help you eliminate the blank page and get organized before you write. Almost any professional writer eliminates the blank page before they write. Outline your work in a comprehensive and logical manner. That's how you eliminate the blank page. And this webinar demonstrates pre-writing work you can do to eliminate the blank page and organize your thoughts before you write. It is so important to get organized before you actually start to create your sentences and paragraphs. In short, before you write, you want to be at the point where it's all over but the writing. When I get to that point, no matter what document, be it a book, be it an article, be it a case study, a white paper, where it's all over but the writing, I'm at that point. I'm thinking, now I can write this document. And that's where this webinar is going to take you. So memoir versus autobiography. An autobiography is your story from birth to where you are now. Can't say from birth to death, because if you're dead, you can't write your autobiography. Somebody maybe will write your biography. So an autobiography is your story from birth to where you are now. The whole enchilada. A memoir focuses on a slice of your life. Now, your memoir includes autobiographical elements that are focused on the slice of the life that you are writing about. Some memoirs will include more autobiographical elements than others, and some autobiographies will be less detailed than others. For instance, The Accidental Writer. That's my memoir. It includes more autobiographical information than many memoirs. But look at the subtitle of the book. It's called The Accidental Writer. Didn't know rules of grammar, became a writer. Had a vasectomy, became a dad. Liked cats, became a dog lover. So while it's not technically an autobiography, it is more autobiographical than some memoirs. The memoir is about more than writing, but it's focused on accidental. Accidental is the theme of my book. And becoming a dad and becoming a dog lover were both accidental as becoming a writer was to me. I want to look right now at the writing process, the 5-step writing process. The first thing you need to do is prepare. You establish your topic and purpose. What are you writing about? Why are you writing? You define and assess your audience. Who are your readers? Determine the detail required to achieve your purpose or convey your topic. Research. If you are an expert, as I presume you're an expert about yourself, your research will be internal. Sometimes you're writing things where you have to do external research, or you may have to do a combination. And I'm going to show you a little bit about the kind of external research you may do before you write your memoir. Organization. That is key. That is what this webinar focuses on. How to prepare a detailed outline to ensure your writing unfolds as comprehensively as possible and in as logical a manner as possible. Notice this is called the writing process, but we haven't done any writing yet. We prepare, we research, we get organized, then we write. We write from outline point to outline point, expanding points into sentences, paragraphs, sections, chapters. Once we've written that first draft, we revise to ensure the writing is as clear, concise, and focused as possible, supports our purpose, conveys our story, and then we check spelling and grammar. Now, if you're not a very good editor, as I am not, you may send your document, your book, out to an editor to have them revise it. But you will do some revisions based on your first draft to make things clearer, more concise, more focused before sending it out to an editor. Before you start writing, you want to determine your focus. In autobiography, you're telling your life story, so why focus? Well, whether you're rich or famous, successful or ordinary, your life story has a broad focus. Who you have become, how you became that person, and perhaps why. Now, it starts at the beginning and goes to where you are now, but you'll find that as you write, a lot of what you write about is about how you became who you are, why you became who you are, as well as, obviously, who you have become. You are why your target readers, be they family, friends, global audience, or something in between, want to read about you. So your focus is on you. In a memoir, you have a specific focus, perhaps winning an Olympic gold, or winning an Oscar, or curing a major illness, maybe becoming a significant political leader, or becoming a writer, like I have become. You have a focus. It's not your entire life. But within that focus, you may have opposites, barriers you had to overcome, or different directions you headed into initially. That can be part of your focus, even though they are the opposite of who you've become and how you've become it. Somehow they've helped lead to the specific focus. So before you start, you also want to determine your theme, which helps give your memoir greatest focus. The theme of my memoir is accidental, as in I am an accidental writer, even though I've been writing for 50 years, the last 40 as a professional writer. Once I establish the theme of accidental, I expand beyond writing to fatherhood and dog ownership, but all accidental, so thematically related. So this is about me becoming a writer, but it's about some other accidental stuff that's happened in my life. I guess you could call me the accidental person. So let's look at the memoir autobiography structure. Where you start depends on what you feel will draw the reader in. If you're famous, the fact is you can start with a mundane opening, such as your birth, the beginning of it all. The readers will stick with you because they want to know you, and they know they will get to the interesting material. Because you're famous, they know you're going to get to what makes you famous, how you became famous. Now, I'm not saying your opening should be boring. I'm just saying if you're famous, you can get away with a less engaging opening. But you want to think about where you start. If you're not so famous, start with something that will draw the reader in. In The Accidental Writer, I start by establishing my credibility as a writer. I have been one of Canada's most successful freelance writers and one of the country's most successful freelance trainers. Now, before freelance writers and trainers who have been more successful than I have been say, hey, wait a minute, not as successful as me, please read my opening line. I said one of Canada's most, not the most. In other words, I've done well for myself. So I establish my credibility. Once I establish who I am in my opening, I get on with how I got there. And I have fun doing so. I have a number of digressions, but I think if you were to read The Accidental Writer, you would see how all the digressions lead me to my focus, to being a writer. If writing your life story, as I said, you might start with your birth or the birth of your parents. You might even go further back if it's relevant to who you are. So when you're writing your life story, you tend to start at the beginning. I'm not saying you have to, but you tend to. However, say you scored the winning goal on a breakaway in overtime in the 7th game of the Stanley Cup Finals. You wouldn't start with your birth. You'd start with you taking the pass that enables you to break away and skate in on goal. However, your opening wouldn't include you scoring the goal. Move in on goal, and then flash back to the first time you were on skates on a frozen pond just outside the small town where you were born. Can you see yourself reading that? Here he is breaking in on goal, and then we flash back. And you build up through your life to the point where you took the pass that launched the breakaway and score. So towards the end of your book, you actually score the goal. That's what the book is about, but we need to build up to that point. Don't give it away in the beginning, but allude to it. However, you wouldn't end your book there with you scoring the goal. You've got celebrations and a parade to write about, as well as your decision to retire and a little bit about your life as it is now for you. So where you start depends on who you are and whether you're writing an autobiography or a memoir. So you can start at what led you to what your story is about. Let's say you're a famous dancer. You might start with the first time you danced, or if you're an actor, the first time you were on stage, or if you're a business person, how you dropped out of university to launch your first business. So it may not be the business that launched you into make a success, but it's your first business. So you want to think about where you start and start at the place that's most relevant to who you have become. To help you, ask questions to figure out where to start. Is this a tale of overcoming addiction? Then when did the addiction start and why? Is it the story of a trek around the world? Then what inspired you to take that first step on your journey? Or perhaps were you a young child and you started walking and you're only like 6 months old? That's really early, and then you walked around the world. So you want to make your opening related to where the book is going. Was your childhood influential to who you became, or totally unrelated? What about the backgrounds of your parents? These are questions you ask yourself to help you figure out where to start. Again, to help you with the writing, and this is before we do the exercises that we'll outline, this is what I call pre-writing. What is the focus of your book? Is it a life story, particular events on which you want to focus, or a particular event, one major event, a series of smaller, tightly related events, a series of smaller, loosely related events? Ask yourself those questions to help you find the focus of your book. It'll be different for everybody writing the memoir. What is the theme of your book? Life is good. Life is bad. Life is indifferent. I'm rich. I'm poor. I'm sick. I'm healthy. I was lucky. I worked hard. There are other themes. You need to determine the theme of your book. The tone. I think The Accidental Writer, the tone is a little bit humorous, a little jocular, a little tongue-in-cheek. There are some memoirs and autobiographies that are deadly serious. Only you can determine the tone, and it should be appropriate to what has happened in your life. What's your style? My memoir is apologetic. Will yours take no prisoners? Will it be just the facts, ma'am? Or will it be flowery and ornate? Again, only you can decide. And you don't want to be deciding this stuff halfway through writing your memoir or autobiography. You want to think about it before you start to write, even before you start to outline your book. Something else you can do in terms of initial story research, create a timeline of your life from beginning to now. Now, you don't jot down what you had for breakfast every day. You jot down the highlights as they pertain to your story. And again, there may be some things in your past that are not directly related, but are somewhat related if you're writing a memoir. If you're writing an autobiography, you want to look at your childhood, adolescence, moving into adulthood, etc., and tell where you are now. Include the year and month and date as best you can. We can't always remember when things took place and the event or significant memory. You're creating a timeline, a calendar of your life. Again, this is pre-writing work. Not everything you jot down will go into your book, but you never know what useful and interesting book-related stories you might remember as you create your timeline. So this is going to help you when you get to the position where you're doing the pre-writing work that will help you outline. So you're getting your head into the game of writing your memoir or autobiography. Think of your life in appropriate segments: childhood, adolescence or coming of age, young adult, midlife adult, older person. What happened in each of these segments? That will help you with creating the timeline. Falling in and out of love. With whom? Think about that. Again, it may come up in your timeline, but if it doesn't, you step back, you think about it and write, okay, and put it into your timeline. What were the most significant challenges you have faced, whether they led to success or failure? Make sure they're in your timeline. List important people and influencers and your relationship with them. Who are the important people in your life? Who influenced you most? Make sure they're in your timeline. When did you know them? Why did you know them? How did you know them? So again, this is all initial story research. We're not doing any writing yet. You know, sometimes when you see a cartoon character, the legs spin before the character takes off and runs. That's what we're doing. We're spinning our legs. And this spinning is going to help us run when it comes to writing. If possible, and this is the external research, talk to people on your lists. Find out if they felt that they were important to you and if you were important to their lives. Compare what they remember to what you recall. Do they remember things the same way as you do? Are there differences? What are they and why? Tape the conversations, take copious notes. I had extensive conversations with my wife about segments of my memoir. And her memories were a little bit different than mine. And it was good to hear what she had to say because it sparked in me memories that were more truthful. I had forgotten about that. Right, that's what happened before this happened. So it really helped me with my timeline, putting my life in order, and with the facts. So it makes my memoir more accurate. So if possible, talk to people on your list. If somebody has passed away, that may not be possible. But see what you can do in terms of external research, even though it's your life you're researching. In theory, all you need to do is internal research because you live the life. But talking to people who were influencers will help you put events in your life into perspective. So all of that pre-writing exercises. Now I want to show you a couple of pre-writing exercises that aren't really about doing research. It's just to help you with the actual writing. Then we're going to move on to an exercise that will help you with the outlining. The first one, and if you can pause the PowerPoint, feel free to pause it and do these exercises. If you can't, when this is over, when the webinar comes to an end, you've got some homework to do. The first exercise is free fall, or technically undirected free fall, also known as stream of consciousness. As I'm talking to you and you're sitting listening, you can't help it. There are thoughts flowing through your brain. And in this exercise, all I want you to do is tap into that stream and write for 5 or 10 minutes without editing yourself. Stream of consciousness. So take 5 or 10 minutes and simply write. I don't care where you go. You're simply writing without editing. And I will explain a bit later why it's important to be able to write without editing. The next exercise, again, if you can, pause the PowerPoint and do this exercise I'm going to tell you about, and then start it up and carry on with the webinar, is called directed freefall. It's stream of consciousness with an opening line. I'm going to give you the opening line, and you simply run with it. I'm not asking you to create a story. I don't really care what happens, nor should you. You just take the opening line and then keep on writing. If you feel like you've gone blank, put ... ellipsis until you tap back into the stream and write. So I'm going to give you the opening line and you write. Again, if you can, pause the PowerPoint, do the exercise. 5 or 10 minutes. The opening line. I looked out the window and thought, and you go from there. I looked out the window and thought. Write for 5 or 10 minutes, and then come back to the PowerPoint and carry on. Welcome back. And let's do one more directed free fall exercise. Boiling Fred's hat in the pasta sauce, Mary thought, and you go from there. Boiling Fred's hat in the pasta sauce, Mary thought. Write, stream of consciousness, do not edit. Go for 5 to 10 minutes. See where it takes you. Pause the PowerPoint if you can. Jot down the opening line and go. Again, welcome back to the webinar. Now we're going to do brainstorming and clustering exercise. And I will tell you a little bit more later on in the webinar about how you apply the free fall to your writing. Clustering is a right brain exercise that helps you put down on paper everything you associate with a topic. It sparks themes, ideas, topics related to your subject matter that you might not have consciously thought of. So it taps into, in many ways, the unconscious, and it helps you do what I call internal research. It also enables you to create a detailed outline before you write, as I will show you in a few minutes. So clustering, it's a right brain exercise. Creating the outline is a left brain exercise. But before you use your left brain, you need to use your right. So how do you cluster? Valid question. You jot down the keyword or phrase in the middle of a blank page. You underline it and circle it. You draw a long dash from the keyword and jot down the first word or phrase that comes to mind. So what is your keyword inspiring? You circle that word or phrase, draw a dash from it, jot down the next word or phrase that comes to mind, circle it. You repeat this until you come to the end of the cluster string of associated words. In other words, you go blank. You return to your keyword. You move quickly, draw a dash from it, jot down the next word or phrase that comes to mind. Circle that word, draw a dash, jot down the next word or phrase. Keep on returning to your keyword and brainstorming words, phrases you associate it with it until you fill the page. Or, as you will see, until you fill pages. Now, a picture is worth 1,000 words, so let's take a look at a cluster. So clustering is our keyword. We circled it, we underline it, and then we draw a dash, word association, circle it, draw a dash, brainstorming, circle it, draw a dash, mind mapping, draw a dash, treasure hunt, draw a dash, pieces of 8, go blank, go back to clustering, grapes, Don Cherry, stream of consciousness, the man doesn't think, he just talks. Stream of consciousness is also called free fall. Free fall is writing without a parachute. It actually, clustering, the word clustering, helped me come up with a workshop called Writing Without a Parachute, where I taught free fall. Clustering is a pre-writing. It helps you come up with ideas. Ideas are information, chunks of data, chunking, outline. So all this pre-writing you work will lead to an outline. How do you eat an apple? One bite at a time. Help me come up with another workshop in which I taught clustering and outlining so that people could write long documents. Now, maybe I would have come up with these titles and these workshops if I had clustered clustering. Maybe. But what I am suggesting to you is that clustering, the word clustering, helped me come up with material that I could use in writing workshops. You need to come up with material you can use in writing your memoir or autobiography. But before we get there, I want you to experience clustering. Again, if you can pause the webinar, 5 or 10 minutes, cluster the word apple. Draw a circle around it, underline it, and see where it takes you. When you get to the end of the string, you come back to apple, see where it takes you. You do that until you fill a page. So take 5-10 minutes, cluster the word apple. Welcome back. I want you to cluster another word just so you experience it and you get to know how to do it before we get into the serious clustering. Cluster the word seasons. Circle it, underline it, and away you go. See what you associate with the word seasons. Again, pause the PowerPoint, take 5 or 10 minutes, see what you come up with. Welcome back. Here's your final cluster exercise. The word you cluster is me. That's me as in you, not me, the workshop or webinar leader. Now you want to spend a good amount of time on this. I put good in quotes. It'll be different for everybody. But I'm literally suggesting you spend an hour or more. You get flip chart paper or a whole lot of paper and you cluster the heck out of me. As you're clustering me, important subtopics may come up. You know, you may put down high school and go, holy crap, there's so much stuff about high school. You get a new sheet of paper and you start clustering high school. Mother, wow, wait a minute, I want to do a cluster on mother, father, sister, work, education, different subtopics, love, hate, whatever. In short, I want you to cluster the heck out of me or out of words and phrases that me inspires. I'm talking several hours, half a day I'm talking, this is something you may want to do over a couple of days. You want to cluster the heck out of me and get down on paper everything that you associate with me, as in you. Cluster the heck out of me. Why do we do that? Your goal is to get down all that you associate with me before you write. After all, what's the alternative? You're going to hold in your head everything you associate with yourself and try to fill the blank page with everything you need to say. It's all in your head. You're going to miss or forget points that you need to make. Clustering puts it all down on paper, puts it all in front of you before you write. Now, you don't go from clustering to writing your memoir or autobiography. Again, clustering is right brain. There is something we want to do with the left brain. So you've clustered the heck out of me. You've got dozens and dozens of sheets of paper. Maybe you've used flip chart paper. So you got dozens of huge sheets of paper. Maybe you use just 8.5 by 11 sheets of paper. You've got dozens and dozens of these sheets. Now, not every cluster string will be relevant to your topic, to your memoir or autobiography. Many, though, will be relevant. Some you'll discard. That's the nature of brainstorming. You wouldn't get to the relevant stuff if you censored yourself and didn't put down the irrelevant stuff. So when you're clustering, cluster as freely as possible. Cluster the heck out of me. Now, once you've done that, you review the cluster of me. When you review your me cluster, you pick big issue topics that seem most relevant to your focus or theme. So you're going to find there are big issues. Maybe take a yellow highlighter and go through. This is huge. This is a huge topic unto itself. For me, it was about how I became a writer, how I became a dad, how I became a dog owner. Those were huge topics. I listed these topics in logical order. That's what I'm suggesting you do. You may have dozens of pages. I'm suggesting you come up with a dozen or more topics listed in logical order. What is logical order? It's the order in which it makes sense to your story to write about them. So where would I start? And then where would I go? And then where would I go? And where would I end? You spend some time on this left brain activity, and you create a book, talk, or table of contents. So literally you list the big issue topics, you look at them, you move them around so the order is logical, and you look at them and you say, yeah, I can see myself writing about these topics in this order. That conveys who I am, what I have done, why I have done it. That will enable me to write my autobiography, or that will give me focus in terms of my memoir. Here's an example of talk from Tell Your Story, how to write memoirs and autobiographies. Memoir versus autobiography. The writing process. Before you start. Structure of memoir autobiography. Initial story research. What is a book? Prewriting exercises. Brainstorming and clustering. And we carry on. So I had all this information in front of me before I started to write how to write memoirs and autobiographies. And in fact, I didn't start to write with just this information in front of me. I will tell you in a moment what I did next. But let me show you another table of contents, the accidental writer. Introduction, boring boy, give a shout, beyond button sucking. Now these topics won't mean anything to you. Eggheads of 404, what the heck is that? Me, an editor, idiot things I have done. But they all meant stuff to me. Candy Store Man, Games Daddy Played, Dust Bunnies. What the heck are dust bunnies? And why are they in my memoir? Amusing myself. My year off. Accidental paid writer. Notice it's called The Accidental Writer. Chapter 13, we finally get to me becoming an accidental paid writer. But everything that precedes it leads up to it. becoming a freelance writer. So I moved from working as a paid writer to a freelance writer, became an accidental trainer, accidental dad, accidental dog lover. MS and me, I accidentally got multiple sclerosis, which is a pain in the accidental, so to speak. What I miss most about it. So you might say that doesn't really have anything to do with my accidental, but to leave it out of my memoir, it's autobiographical information, and my memoir would have missed it because of my MS. I no longer write. I no longer train. Yes, I'm doing this. This is training, and I had to write it, but I don't do it for clients. Hence, pay what you can. If you can pay a few shekels for this, you will contribute to my retirement fund, what I miss most, and my epilogue. Now, again, these topics may not mean anything to you, but each one meant a lot to me. These were major topics that came out of my clustering of me. So what do you do with these major topics? You cluster each topic. Boring boy, give a shout. Cluster that. That becomes the key word or phrase in the cluster. You cluster each topic, and you get down on paper all you want to write about. Yes, some of this information is already down on paper. Push all that aside. We've gone left brain, we've organized, we've got it all organized into a table of content, and then we recluster each word or phrase. And then what do? We clustered the heck out of Give a Shout. That my high school song was Give a Shout, Give a Cheer for the men who brew the beer in the cellars of old BCI, the unofficial song. So obviously we got a lot of information about high school. And I can go through each of them and tell you what it meant to me, but the fact is you're going to come up with different stuff for you. You cluster each topic, and then based on your cluster of the topic, you create a chapter by chapter outline. Major point 1, subpoint 1, secondary point AB, tertiary point 1, 2, secondary point C. So from your cluster of the topic, which is your chapter title, you cluster that chapter title, and then you create an outline of the chapter. Now, I'm not showing you a chapter outline because your chapter outlines would be different than my chapter outlines, but I'm showing you how to create an outline. You've got major points, subpoints, secondary points, tertiary points, and you do this for each chapter. You convert your top clusters to outlines. Put down the title of the chapter and left brain outline for each one. So say your autobiography or memoir is 15 or 20 chapters. You've got 15 or 20 pages that look like this. Now you may have major point 3, 4, 5 in a chapter. I'm not saying you can only have 1 or 2. But for each of your chapters, this is what you want in front of you. Do you see how you get there? Do you see why this is crucial? Do you see how once you've got this, it's all over but the writing? Now let me show you a little bit more on outlining before I tell you what you do. An outline provides logical structure. It gives you a detailed roadmap from A to Z. Notice this PowerPoint in front of you. All it is an outline. It's enabling me to talk in a logical manner, and it's enabling me to move through this webinar in a way that makes sense, detailed. It ensures all major and minor points are covered. It helps produce greater clarity and focus and helps you detect errors in logic. So once I had my initial PowerPoint together, I could look through it and say, oh, I should talk about this first, this third, this fifth, this last, blah, blah, blah. I move slides around. So I detected errors in logic. I eliminate those errors, and suddenly I had clarity and focus. It also removes the stress of trying to hold on to all you know while writing. So the blank page is gone, It's not all in your head. You can write quickly in manageable chunks, just like I can talk quickly in manageable chunks with the PowerPoint in front of me. It ensures you do not lose your train of thought when you take breaks. Look at this. I'm going to pause what I'm doing. There, I just went for a drink of water, and now I'm back. I haven't lost my train of thought. Why? Because the outline is in front of me. Now, you can do this for any document. If you're doing it for a business document, you need to get it approved, and you create a detailed outline, get that approved, and then your writing is to an approved outline. When you're writing a book, you approve the outline, and your writing is to an outline that makes sense to you. Once you have the outline in front of you, you write from outline point to outline point using, and I told you we'd come back to this, directed freefall. Each outline point is like the opening of a directed freefall. You write from point to point, you freefall, you fill in the blanks. Now, if you've got your major points, subpoints, sub-subpoints, sub-sub-subpoints, it's going to make your free-falling easier because you've got a lot of starting points. You produce sentences and paragraphs based on your outline. The more detailed your outline, the easier it will be to produce sentences and paragraphs. You do not edit until you have completed your book. Or for those of you who have to edit, okay, complete at least a full chapter of your book, edit that, move on to the next one. Editing interferes with the process of writing. You want to focus on writing. Your first draft is for nobody's eyes but yours, so you have no need to correct spelling, grammar, or even logical errors. Finish a chapter, finish your book, and then you go back as the editor. You put on a different hat and you edit. Now, this is not a how to write webinar. We're getting you to the point where it's all over but the writing. How each person writes is going to be different in terms of content, structure, and style, based on the document, the topic, and the target audience. So based on who you are, what this is about, who you're trying to attract, your writing will be different. However, allow me to say this. The more detailed your outline, the more logical the flow of your outline, the easier it will be to write your document. So you want to get a comprehensive, detailed outline that flows logically. And then you write using your style from point to point to point. You get a detailed outline of your memoir or autobiography in front of you. It's all over but the writing. That's what you want to get to. The blank page is gone. You're not holding on to all the information you need to say in your head. It's there on the page. In other words, as every professional writer knows, you want your outline to be so comprehensive and detailed that it takes you to the point where it's all over but the writing. You thought the writing was tough, and for many people the writing is difficult. It takes a lot of work, and I'm not saying that writing the sentences and paragraphs is going to be easy, but if you can get to the point where it's all over but the writing, you can get that first draft down. Then if you need help, call in an editor. In fact, get the first draft down, go over it, and revise it, get the second draft, maybe the third draft before you call in the editor. All over but the writing. And doing this will mean your editing is going to be less onerous as well. So why hold back on the editing? Editing is part of the writing process, but you don't want to edit while you write. If you try to edit while you write, it interferes with the writing. It interferes with the concentration and the flow of your writing. So you follow your outline and write until you complete the first draft of your document. Complete a chapter, complete a book. Then go back and edit it. Because that first draft is for your eyes only. So who cares if it's not perfect? Nobody else is going to see it. Nobody is judging you. We are our harshest critics. We judge ourselves. So by doing the free fall, I hope that helped you write without editing. And if you said, oh man, when I was free falling, I was editing the heck out of my work, go back and do more free fall. before you cluster and before you get your outline together, because you want to write from point to point without editing. You don't want your editor to interfere with the writing itself, with the flow, with the information you're conveying. Once you've written that first draft, you edit the first draft for flow, for content. And as I've said, you may do this a couple of times because editing is an important part of the writing process. You just don't want to edit as you write. You proofread your book to correct any spelling or grammatical errors. You publish your finished book. Either look for a publisher or, like me, you self-publish. But self-publishing and how to do it, that's a whole other webinar, something I plan on creating in the near future. So outline your book, do the pre-writing exercise, the pre-writing exercises, do your clustering, outline your book, write from point to point, and then edit your book. And then you can concern yourself with looking for a publisher, self-publishing your book. Get a solid draft of your book down there before you start to think about publishing. Anyway, that's it for the webinar. The webinars that I offer include the one you've just taken, Tell Your Story, How to Write Memoirs and Autobiographies, How to Find Corporate Work as a Freelance Writer, Editor, Trainer, Website Designer, or other sole proprietor. It's about 45 minutes long. How to become an effective and efficient email writer. If you have to write a lot of email for business, you may find this webinar of interest based on the book, Harness the Email Writing Process. How to write effectively and efficiently about any topic. This one focuses, if you feel you've got what you needed to get out of clustering outline, that's what this one focuses on. You can do that for any topic. It's a 30-minute webinar. How to write a nonfiction book in 60 days, based on my book, How to Write a Nonfiction Book in 60 Days, which only took me 30 days to write. But that's, because the more you do this, the faster you get, and I hope the better you get. So anyway, there's more information on my webinars, paullima.com/PWYC. And I have written, as I say, 20 plus books. I'm not going to read them all to you. If you want to look at my books, go to paullima.com/books, and you can read about my books on various aspects of writing. And in fact, I've got a book on MS, and I have a book of short stories. I have actually done a little bit of creative or fiction writing. But go to paullima.com/books. You can read about my books. So if you receive value from today's webinar, the suggested workshop fee is $10. If the workshop did not meet your expectations, or if it's a matter of paying for the webinar or eating, feel free to pay less or not pay anything at all. I have no way of knowing if you pay. I'm not going to say I don't care. Any payment you contribute helps with my retirement fund. You can pay what you can at www.paullima.com/pay-what-you-can. And again, whether you pay anything or not, the workshop fee includes the PowerPoint. If you can't download the PowerPoint from wherever you've watched this, send an email to paullima.com@gmail.com with the subject line PPT Write Memoir. I will send you a PDF of the PowerPoint, and you can open the PDF on almost any computing device. Thank you very much for your time. I hope you found this webinar worthwhile, and I hope it helps you tell your story to write your memoir or your autobiography. Thanks again. All the best. Bye.